Welcome to the Flynn Brothers podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Jimmy. Today's big idea: hair loss, weight gain, and the drugs that cure both.
We discuss my increasingly unimpressive hair, plus the famous men throughout history who have suffered hair loss and the various treatments they ran to.
Later, we talk about my insatiable appetite and ever-expanding waistline, and why GLP-1s might be the end-all, cure-all for weight management.
Finally, we debate which brother has the best body parts to create the ultimate specimen, FrankenBrother.
It's all coming up. But first, here's the Solons.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we got a confession to make at the top of today's podcast. We're not perfect,
May
right?
come to a surprise to many viewers.
Yeah, nobody's perfect. For that matter, nobody's nerfect. But we're talking about some... What, you don't like that? You never seen that on a T-shirt?
Of course.
Of course.
You want one?
You making them?
The other people are. I could get you one.
Yeah, buy me one. I wouldn't mind it. Well, 4th of July present, huh? But, we're not perfect, and we certainly have some things we could improve upon. And, we can discuss some of those things. Me, myself, I'll confess I'm a touch overweight, right?
Sure.
I carry a few extra pounds. You?
I could have a better, stronger hairline.
Yeah,
certainly.
I kind of goaded you about it the other day. We were fixing our hair up in the mirror, and you were kind of combing your hair. I came by and you ran my hand through my hair, and I said, "Look at that, thick as a rug." I was kind of goading you, trying to kind of rub your face in it a bit.
You were, yeah. I'd say genetically there is a thicker hair, but I believe comes from our father's side, and then there is a better hairline, which comes from our mother's side. So you got those two things. I got the thinner hair from the mother's side and the worse hairline from the father's side.
It's a shame. It's a shame. You're a very dashing man, if I do say so myself, and you got a better body than mine, as we'll get into later. But we'll start with your hair and sort of your. We usually do John's brief histories, and we'll get into some sort of fact-based, not-so-brief histories later. We're doing some longer personal and fact-based histories throughout this episode, aren't we?
It's John's personal history of his own hair.
Well, let's hear about it.
So I've always had a large forehead, a huge head in general.
A five head, some will say.
I currently have a hat that says it is one size, and it is too small for me. It's supposed to be one size.
Is that a head issue or a forehead issue?
Well, it's the forehead is where hats go.
That's true.
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 I've always had a quite a large forehead. I'm kind of insecure about it. Used to wear sort of bangs down, and I would hate to get my hair cut. To get those bangs taken out, because then my forehead would be exposed. And when I was in 6th grade, I had a girlfriend who, God bless her, now is a lesbian and happily married. Good for her.
Congratulations.
And she told me she did not like my haircut. She thought I looked bad.
Sounds like a girlfriend.
And I was, again, insecure about my forehead, so I sort of raised up my eyebrows to sort of shrink the distance between
the forehead,
them. And I would say that this is a persistent habit of mine that I've had for the rest of my life. And if there are close observers of my brother and I's forehead, you will notice there are many wrinkles in my forehead, and my brother's is smooth as a baby's bum.
Well, you're an older man, and with age comes wrinkles.
Yeah, but I'm not. I don't have 18 months more wrinkles than you.
But it's, you're more expressive, I think, in general. You look at actors, they have more wrinkles just by the nature of their profession. They're expressing take after take, day after day.
Those that they don't obliterate with Botox.
Yeah, that's true.
Which this sort of consciousness is devastating to me, because I would say my favorite way to have my hair is to have almost no hair at all. Like,
I think most guys feel that way. They like the buzz cut, right?
I think the buzz cut really just feels wonderful.
Yeah,
You love the fuzziness of it, the lack of styling. It just is a style of hair that unless you have a very specific head shape as a man, most of the time you're not really going to pull off. But I especially didn't pull it off when I was younger. I idolized Jason Williams, Mike Bibby of the Sacramento Kings, both of whom had very short cuts, and I wanted mine to be like that. But I have sort of an oddly shaped head.
I can't really do the buzz cut too much. I got a very perfectly round head, bowling ball-esque, and so I look okay with it, but it's certainly, I'm a bit of a curly from the Three Stooges when I do it.
While I would say I'm a bit more of a pentagon, very boxy.
Pentagonal.
Very, very rectangular along the cheeks. And so it went sort of with a Bieber style for a while. We went to a all-boys high school, so hair just didn't really factor into anything that I really thought about.
No one was commenting on it. No one was too concerned with styling it. It was just you came to school with a messy rag of hair, which was the style at the time.
And then right before I go to college, there was a kind of resurgence of these old school barbers.
Right.
They would lather up the back of your neck to finish you off with cream and then straight razor shave you.
Yeah.
And there was this place that I went to where they literally would not cut your hair unless you allowed them to do the buzz on the side. They
over the ears.
They would
super
not
short.
do a scissor cut all the way around. They'll scissor cut the top of your head, but not the sides. The sides are getting buzzed. So I went there for a while, liked that sort of style. In college, I had really long, thick, maybe not thick, but flowing hair. And I think it was, as many people do in college, it was a good look for me. I would probably say that long hair John in college, probably the hottest I ever looked.
You think so?
I'd say it would be.
You were a little. We'll
peak.
get into some of my weight issues later, but your freshman year, you tacked on a few. You were starting to look like Jim, weren't you?
I was. I definitely got a bit portly, a little husky around the middle. But then I took up running and then got pretty thin, and then
combined it with the long
hair. And basically what I remember thinking this to myself was like, well, I'm not very strong and I'll never have guns. But if I have this long hair, then I'm set. I'll be able to attract women with this hair.
Right.
Little did I know that this was a false promise that my body was making to me. I wouldn't say that it hasn't reached necessarily epidemic proportions, but when I, go a day or two without showering, I have very thin hair that is also greasy.
Right.
And it can really look bad in a hurry. I'd say it looks quite nice after a shower. I can style it. I can do a bit of trickery to make it look nice. But basically the only hairstyle now that is allowed for me is sort of pushing forward and slightly to the side.
The vintage receding hairline hairstyle, I should say. You did skip over one phase, which was the curtains phase. This is sort of, if you remember, sort of 90s Disney, Jonathan Taylor Thomas is coming to mind, sort of the middle part, the bangs on the sides. We call them the curtains.
Yes.
You had that for a little while, too. Was that kind of post-long hair, easing
that
into
was
short hair?
that was after the pandemic. During the pandemic, you and I both shaved our heads and then didn't cut our hair for probably 8 months, I would say.
At least.
And as a result, my hair grew out quite a bit, and I was like, oh, this is kind of fun. Like, this actually looks all right. And so I didn't want to lose all of my hair. I spent so much time growing it out. So I had the barber sort of cut it into these, sort of a middle part section. But again, the thinness of my hair just eventually, it would look good right out of the shower and after it had been styled and everything. But, within a matter of hours, I was looking like a disreputable character in a 70s movie.
And your barber, as he was cutting your hair, he was doing an impression of a 20s gangster, and he kept saying, "It's Coitons for you."
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yes. We actually get our hair cut by a couple of gentlemen who were taught how to cut hair in the Soviet Union.
That's right. They themselves are brothers. That's why we go to them. We're brothers. They're brothers. And we asked them once, how'd you learn how to cut hair? Because, in America, those hair salon schools, they'll use wigs and stuff, or people come in for a cheap haircut. And he said something about we needed the wigs for the war effort or in the Soviet Union. I'm not sure.
I'm sure, though, they didn't need the wigs necessarily,
right,
but whatever makes the
whatever.
wigs.
And then he was like, we would just have to bring in our family members. So if we screwed up, it's like, hey, it's just your cousin. Who cares if you took a patch out of his head? Very fascinating.
And both of them, interestingly, are bald now.
That's true. Yeah,
But
that's very
still
curious.
very reverent with hair.
But
They-
you're a
sorry.
short hair man. Is that
Short
right?
hair man,
Yeah,
probably what I like, how I like it the best, and how it looks best on me. And it just to the point, the barber has complimented the fine texture of my hair, which perhaps made me feel good. Maybe he's just trying to
Make
pump
the
up
customer feel good.
what little-
Customer's always right, huh?
what little remains of my self-esteem attached to that. But yeah, I do think that you sort of, as you get older, your options dwindle as a man
Yes.
for what you can do with hair, and it is difficult because as men, as we've said, most would prefer the buzz cut, but I think most women that I've talked to would prefer the longest, most unkempt hair possible
Yeah, it is
versus
funny.
the buzz cut.
It is so funny. Yeah, it's like sometimes people will love, ladies will like when you get a buzz cut, kind of running the palm over the buzzed hair and stuff. But let's dive in now. You've prepared. You had sort of your personal history of hair, and now we're moving into a history. What would you call this?
This is John's brief history of solutions to balding.
And will it be brief? Because I'm looking at the outline here, and there's a fair amount of notes. Briefish.
Briefish. This is one of these.
Briefish.
It really was just fascinating. I have to say, there's a lot of
that's
stuff.
okay. I don't blame you at all. But
So the classic, the most tried and true solution to balding: comb it forward. Comb it forward.
yeah.
Do your best to
Yeah.
cover up as much of that huge forehead as you possibly can. Caesar Augustus, the great ruler of ancient Rome, famously a bald man, and combed it all forward, and that's why there's the what we think of as the Caesar cut of it just being cut right in the front.
short bangs.
On all of the statues of him that you can see, it's all just the hair is being pushed forward.
Wow, I got to look for that
Yeah.
next time.
And so this, I pulled a lot from a Substack. They're called gethistories.com.
Okay.
Fairly fascinating stuff here. So
Little
I'm gonna,
plug for them, free of charge. Yeah, beautiful.
I'm going to give it the old John Flynn spin here. So we got Pliny the Elder, the great historian of the Roman times.
Beautiful beer named after him as well. Yeah.
Indeed. He said that one of the first solutions to try to make hair grow back on your head was to get the ashes of an ass's genitals, and then you mix that with urine and lard, which that's about as foul a sentence as you can say without having any curse words in it.
Yes. They all sound like swear words,
Like
but boy.
that. This, I think, demonstrates the ancient desperation
Yes.
of men to hold on to their hair, considering that you would willingly rub the ashes of an ass's genitals mixed with urine and lard.
Say what
on
you
your
will
head.
about minoxidil. It's it smells a lot better than that.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned this insecurity with men, and going back to the beginning of time with if they're losing their hair, wanting to have hair. There's this Jim Jeffries bit about this where women, right, are okay to wear wigs, right? If they're losing their hair, there's no social agenda against women with wigs. But God forbid a man wears a toupee or a hairpiece or tries to do it, then it's seen as pathetic. It is an interesting kind of gender divide, right? Not that women don't have their own struggles, but just when it comes to hair, it is this very interesting gender divide.
Men are not supposed to care about the way that they look. I think, despite the fact that every man cares how he looks at least a little bit. And I think if you put a hairpiece or a wig on, you are admitting, I am insecure about the way that this looks, and so I'm going to cover it up. Whereas women, I think it's fine to primp yourself and make yourself look as beautiful as possible. I think that's, a part of the unfair standards that we have. Also allow them to have a little bit more leeway in the beauty practices that they deploy.
Fair observation. All right, get back to it. You were talking about donkey balls and piss. Back to the serious research.
Okay, so then we've got Hildegard of Bingen. He was around in the early the late 1000s and early 1100s. So he says that there was bear fat mixed with the ashes of straw, and you leave it on your head for a long while. And bear fat, another thing that stinks. Bear fat would be actually the main thing that people believed caused hair to grow back. Who knows why? Maybe because bears are so hairy.
Are these now? These aren't like hair pieces. These are like pastes they're putting on their hair in the effort to regrow hair. Is that
is
correct?
right.
They're not
Yes.
keeping this on their head, going to a dinner party and being like, this is my hair.
This bear fat. This is my hair.
my
No,
real
no.
hair.
So they eventually
Okay,
mix it with
okay.
herbs to make it less offensive.
Okay.
And then eventually what just happens is, hairdressers realize that this doesn't work. So they don't have to have genuine bear fat in the products that they're selling. And so, and this is much further along in time, they would basically just perfume pork fat, lard, and sell that as bear grease. And one of the ways that they would try to seem authentic is they would either have live or taxidermied bears
Oh golly!
in their
Wow.
shops and be like, "Hey, this is where we get the good stuff."
Yeah, pretty smart.
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
smart, man. Pretty smart
Yeah.
marketing.
So then people, realize this bear fat thing, it isn't working, and the trend of wigs for men becomes acceptable.
It was
when-
acceptable for a
Yes,
little while.
for a
It
while.
jumped the gun a little, but for a
Yes.
while there, it was somewhat acceptable,
We'll
fashionable.
We'll get to that. Louis the 13th starts wearing wigs. He's a man who goes bald at a very early age. And this is copied by his courtiers, the people who are in the court and sort of set the style for the kingdom and the wealthy and
What
the
era
nobles
is
and
this? Like
so-
1600s?
1600s.
Okay.
And so, they're not being able to wash these wigs, and they're usually white is the look, or slightly off-white. But these are filthy times, clop, clop, riding horses, if you're lucky, you're in a wagon being pulled on a dirt road. So they're kept clean and white with lots of powder. And this is actually where the phrase big wig comes from, because these wigs were extremely expensive, and you could only have one if you were a very important person, if you were a big wig.
That is a fun fact.
Also, wigs, I believe, were reputed to cover up some signs of syphilis, which hair falls out as a result of that venereal disease. They fall out of fashion with the American and French Revolution. When
Wigs
people,
you're talking
wigs.
about, not syphilis.
Sadly,
All right,
is still sticking around, although they say it's curable. They fall out of fashion with the American and French Revolution. Kings are no longer seen as people that you want to emulate. Contrary, perhaps, to popular belief, George Washington never wore a wig. That is
Really?
his hair that he just pulls back
Wow.
and braids kind of like a wig, and he powdered it so it looks like a wig, but it was his actual real hair.
How about it?
John Adams did. Jefferson kind of wore a wig a little bit in the beginning, and then the most famous is Benjamin Franklin never wore a wig.
Right.
Was hilariously, I think, considering the time period, and he was with the French before their revolution, so all of their men are still wearing wigs. He's just gloriously bald
Wow.
with long Larry David,
Yes,
like
the ring around the
exactly,
head.
the
Yeah,
rosy.
it's kind of like an old school pickup artist technique. He was peacocking a bit, almost
There's
reverse peacocking.
reverse peacocking in a way, to make him seem sort of earthy and masculine. And so later, though, things kind of start changing, and there was a study from Iowa University that really interests. I think just the way they phrase it is very interesting. Since 1800, the U.S. Census generally shows far more 39-year-olds than 40-year-olds. The implication being that people lie about being 39.
My word.
Well, I mean, how would you check it in the 1800 census?
point, good
Furthermore, the costume of men switched from a design clearly intended to make the young look older to one that was clearly intended to make the old look younger. So, for example, this era saw the decline of the wig and the rise of the toupee.
The toupee.
The toupee, which has a fairly ignominious association with male insecurity,
Right.
I would say. But as we will soon find out, they were much more prevalent than perhaps thought. In the 1950s, an estimated 350,000 men wore toupees, and that wasn't even the peak. By 1970, 2.5 million out of roughly 20 million men wore them.
Wow.
So that's nearly 10% of men were wearing
Wow.
toupees in
That
the
is
70s.
incredible.
And you may think, well, I was a bunch of pathetic guys who were insecure
Joe
about themselves.
Schmo, yeah.
It is a who's who of men's men wore toupees.
Hit me.
Burt Reynolds
No.
wore it to sort of maintain his signature youthful look.
yeah, true.
Ted Danson.
Of course, from Cheers,
Yes.
right? There's in there that episode.
There is
where
a
he,
scene where a character, his friend, is feeling insecure about the way that she looks, and he's like, "Look, I wear a toupee." And in the script, it was just he says, "I wear a toupee," but Danson actually pulled it out and removes it, and you can see the way his hair, it's just crazy, is the craziest hair you've ever seen. And it makes sense if you look at Cheers, like the front of Danson's hair is doing something that nobody's hair has ever done in the history of hair, just going straight up and back. And he has a bald spot in the back of his head, and I think now, I'm guessing he's had hair replacement
Or
surgery
plugs or whatever.
Yeah, which is crazy though, because he's had him white put in.
Yeah,
which is
smart. It was
pretty
like
fascinating.
It's like when you kind of, because he probably wasn't quite at the white hair stage when he got him put in, but it's like when you buy a pair of pants slightly big for a kid, and it's like it'll grow into them. It's kind of like that. It'll grow into the plugs.
Yeah, exactly. And with him, it looks natural and it looks good. So I think really the main issue, I'll get back to the men who wear them in a second. The main issue with the toupee is that it looks fine if it's a good toupee and it's well styled and everything. The disaster is the toupee coming askew, going awry.
It's like plastic surgery where if no one notices, you're good. You kind of get away with it. The best compliment someone can give you is, I didn't even realize you were wearing a toupee. Oh, you got a facelift? I didn't even notice. You just look great, right?
Andre Agassi, famous tennis player who was known in his younger years for having a big, huge mane of hair, slowly started losing it. And he said that he wore a hairpiece at like a huge final, and his mind was not on the match at all. He was literally just like, I just hope my hairpiece doesn't fall off. So you can see how the obviously the effect it has on men's psyche. All right, let's get back to these manly men. Sean Connery wore a toupee during every single Bond film.
Is that true?
That's true.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had a pretty funny quote about losing hair. It's like, it's really not that big of a deal. It's not that the end of the world or anything like that. It's like, it's very easy for you, Sean Connery, to say this sort of thing as opposed to, your regular run-of-the-mill man. Shatner fans have long been suspicious that he was wearing, William Shatner was wearing a toupee throughout lots of Star Trek. Elton John was losing his hair for a while and then just decided to wear a wig, and now nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody ever
He's
cares.
the one exception to the rule.
Does he still wear one? I thought he maybe got some hair. He still wears one.
He just
Oh,
wears his
wow,
wig,
wow,
which I think
okay.
makes sense. Perhaps there are different standards for straight men versus gay men.
That's possible
Worthy of exploring. All right, now I'm just going to hit you with the rapid fire. Here are the most famous, I think, manly men. Humphrey Bogart, Frank Sinatra, and John Wayne all wore toupees.
Those are the who's who dudes of the 20th century. All wore them?
All wore them.
Unbelievable.
So it makes you think that these standards of traditional masculinity to going from, James Bond to John Wayne, it's all trickery and delusion. And I think
smoke and mirrors.
Smoke and mirrors. And I think too, a lot of this just goes back to Americans forming their ideas of how people should look based on films and television. And as someone who's just been on a few sets for just like game shows or commercials, you should never, ever, ever compare yourself to what somebody looks like on television. The amount of effort and lighting and people who are doing everything they can to pull every last vestige of you looking as presentable as possible. Everyone's working on it like it's a rocket launch. And to that point, John Cryer of 2.5 Men, maybe not as much of a manly man as these other men that I've mentioned.
Despite the theme song of 2.5 Men.
Manly man. He said about his hair, it's gone now. This is an elaborate illusion. Talking about his hair on the show. The work of several talented professionals making the most of like 4 hairs. It's amazing what they can do. I'm not wearing a wig or anything, but it's a long, involved process that starts with something like shoe polish that they coat your scalp with.
Jeez, man. It is crazy. I mean, he throughout the whole run of the show, it's kind of a short cropped like buzz cut. But then, yeah, years later, you're like, John Cryer, well, he's doing the shaved head thing. He's trying to maybe be like Heisenberg. And it's like, oh, he's bald the whole time. It's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that was, speaking of Heisenberg, that was a pretty bold moment in Breaking Bad where you're just like looking at all the characters like, almost all of these characters are either bald or with shaved heads. Yeah,
the man's dream.
Yeah,
no
upkeep. That was the real heyday there.
Very cool. All right, well, more recent hair loss treatments when we come back. All right, we talked wigs, we talked toupees. Those are passé, though. Let's move into more recent history with these hair loss treatments. Let's move over to hair surgery, which that's kind of become a more common thing recently, hasn't it?
Hear a lot of guys going to Turkey, coming back with fuller heads of hair. Perhaps the most open person who's admitted to doing this is Joel McHale on a podcast with Justin Long. He admitted to doing it 3 times, and that is something that I've found is you need to do multiple treatments for this.
Not necessarily going to Turkey, but you're just saying this hair restoration
They
surgery.
call it
What do they
follicular unit extraction. And basically what you're doing is you're taking hair follicles from the back of the head and you're putting them on top.
Makes sense.
It's a whole artistry to it because obviously you want this to look as normal as possible. I mean, even Joel McHale, who's had hair surgery, you would say theoretically has a receding hairline. Like that is the look that he's opted for. Joe Buck is another person who's done this.
The sportscaster.
Sportscaster, which again, it's funny because it's like, it's sort of for them, but these are very front-facing people. You know, Joel McHale, he's a leading man on a network television show. Joe Buck, he's calling the World Series and the Super Bowl. It's for us in a way, too. Like, I think that's
like why 80-year-old Al Michaels dyes the hair. It's like, we don't want to see our sportscaster with white hair. We want to see him looking young-ish.
Yeah, speaking of shoe polish, that's the...
on top of that, Ed,
I feel like that's what Al Michaels is using. But yeah, so like this can be very effective. Like plastic surgery.
Expensive, I imagine.
Yes, quite expensive. Like plastic surgery, it only works if the effect is seamless. So Rafael Nadal is another guy who has done this, but his didn't take as much. He's still got it fairly thinning on top, and I think he's might be gone for him.
He, as a tennis player, he can use the headband to obscure it a bit. LeBron James similarly.
Well, he was someone who, yes, it's towards the end of his career, it was definitely more noticeable, and you could at the beginning of the match he'd look all right, and then you know, as it went along, the sweat can be, you know, your worst enemy. So this brings us to Rogaine, or as it's more commonly known, minoxidil.
Yes.
It started as a treatment for ulcers. It was found to lower blood pressure, and then they also later noticed that this was tied to increased hair growth in some patients. Approved by the FDA in 1988. In 2017, it was approved for generic use, meaning you didn't need to have the patent. You didn't need to be Rogaine to make it, and it's usable for men and women. And you can buy a bunch at Costco.
That's cool.
It's just right there on the shelf.
You get a bunch of frozen pupusas while you're at it.
I've seen it at Albertsons. It's all over the place. It's not effective for everyone, they say. It can cause scalp irritation or your hair falling out a bit in the first few months. And this is something
that's bad.
That's
man,
a tough
when
one.
You're like, I'm trying to keep whatever I got, and it starts falling out.
Especially if your scalp was irritated. That would be tough. And it's something that you have to use for the rest of your life. If you stop using it, then your hair will continue falling out.
It's like gout medication. It's a deal with the devil.
It's something you just have to look at as like, is this something that I want? How much am I willing to do for this? And I've seen it also, you know, we've known some people anecdotally who have had, you know, alopecia or things like that happen, and this has been an effective way of sort of bringing it back. Judd Apatow is a proud user of it, and
famous filmmaker. You're neglecting these great people and their wonderful professions. I'm just going to pepper them in this.
Well, they're just human beings to me now when we're talking about hair.
They're just brothers in the hair loss
That's
journey.
right. He swears by it. Proud user, talks about it a lot. Nobody's sure why it works.
Huh.
Nobody knows.
If you're using it topically, is are ulcers going away? Is blood pressure getting lowered, or is that more if you administered it orally?
I think
would
it's more
imagine,
administered orally.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. I mean,
Interesting,
I don't know
interesting.
that is. Matthew McConaughey was someone who
Famous actor.
in my research I came across. There's a pretty famous photo of McConaughey's hairline going back pretty far, and he's
like
been
90s maybe.
Yeah, kind of 90s.
Yeah,
He's been
yeah.
accused of getting hair surgery. He says he doesn't. He says he has done Regenics, which I feel like I've seen late night ads for it. I looked up their website. It's my the ads on all of my websites now are all hair loss related, targeting me like the sap I am, like the future sucker I'm gonna be. And so what you do with Regenics is you send them hair, they test it, and then they create a customized plan for you. And so that's what McConaughey says.
In terms of what is customized plan, like
I
a
guess they
wig
get
or
you. They
what?
say there's no chemicals. Like to me, it's a very sort of black box. You know, you
must
send
be a
it in.
Texas thing. Huh?
Yeah, who knows? Then the more hardcore one is finasteride, which
Good
is
pronunciation. We don't always nail the pharmaceutical names on this podcast. Good job so far.
that felt good to me. It was originally for enlarged prostates. It blocks a hormone that causes that condition, but then it also blocks the hormone that causes hair loss. So it can increase the number of scalp hairs and slow down hair loss, but it will not increase body hair.
So it sounds like a lot of these medications, it's like the sooner you start, the better, because it's about sort of holding the battle line versus fully regrowing hair.
I think finasteride, there's a little bit of a better chance of like bringing it back. And with Rogaine, you know, you can see some of the before and afters, and there's hair coming back. But finasteride, it has some pretty gnarly side effects. Just to run through them: decrease in libido, ED, disorders when reaching climax. I guess breast tenderness and enlargement, as well as depression. Which all of the previous side effects I feel like would give me depression.
Yes.
And this is something you mentioned, Jim Jeffries, earlier. He's talked about this in his special and sort of poked fun at himself for like how pathetic the amount of hair that he still has is, but all the work that he has to do to keep it up. And yeah, I think that is one of the tough things about these is that all of them have these sort of trade-offs, but there's been this much more widespread knowledge of them as a result of Hims, this very popular online way to get basically the medications you wouldn't want to go to your doctor to get.
They advertise medications for mental health disorders, for hair loss, erectile dysfunction. Their big sell is the discreet packaging, and it's sort of, men always need this when it comes to doctors and medicine. They need to keep their pride. They need to keep their machismo, right? Men really struggle with this as a whole, and I think Hims kind of caters this. It's very like neat, clean packaging. It's they have good marketing, good advertisements. They bombard you with advertisements. I feel like in the last 5 years, pretty much every time we watch a sports program or frankly anything geared toward 18 to 49-year-old males, there's a Hims ad.
Yeah,
It's
clearly
pretty incredible.
business is going quite well for them.
Yes.
And I think they're a little bit duplicitous, though, because they have a slogan that says, hair loss is a choice. And not all of these products work for every person, or not all of the trade-offs are worth it for every person. They make it seem easy, seamless, painless. I mean, in the ads, you just see guys like putting a few drops onto their hair, and they've already got decent hairline. So it's like, what is this guy? That's also, I think, a hilarious thing about all of the hair loss ads is they're always, the shot is always the same of a person with actually a pretty decent hairline pulling up the hair and like seeing where it's
That's
at.
the same thing for like weight loss. They're showing like workout equipment. It's these really fit people on like an ab cruncher a treadmill. It's like, show my fat ass on the rowing machine.
Yeah,
it's
like
so
that person,
glamorous it looks.
That person isn't on Ozempic. And I think there's just what makes it feel weird to me is that there is like you have this doctor consultation, but it reminds me almost of like the medical marijuana era in California.
Just a charade.
Yeah, it's just like they're just signing. It feels like
they're looking.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that.
But they're
isn't
just
the way
looking to sign the prescription. They're incentivized to sign the prescription. It's profit motivated.
If you know what to say to them, I mean, they don't know you beyond this little chat that you've had with them. So I think what is holding me back from trying out some of these things are I'm a bit afraid of the complications.
For sure.
I don't really love the idea of doing something for the rest of my life. Actually, mom and dad had gotten this somehow he had gotten this thing that was apparently for like regenerating hair, and I was like, all right, I got it for free, no big deal. I tried it, and it really made my scalp feel terrible. It was very unpleasant, and it's just one of those things where it's like, do you want to do this? The problem is that there is this like waiting period before you see the effects of these things. Usually it's on a trial period of like months. You have to basically take a leap of faith that these products are going to work. And, the money of that, I think, is hard to really want to flush down the drain. And then you're sort of like, well, I don't know. I don't think it's that bad yet. And there's things that, I feel you can cover up for it, or it's not really even that big of a deal. And so, ultimately it might be something that I do in the future. I've known older men who have done this stuff, and it has worked for them as well, and like brought back some of the hair. But at the moment, the thing that I've been using that I find helps is there's these biotin and collagen shampoos that have thickened up my genetically thin hair.
Yeah. Blame it on the genetics. Yeah, I think it's true. I think when you get personal recommendations from people, it really goes a long way. There's so many different movies and TV shows to watch, hard to decide. But if you hear one of your friends say, hey, I saw this movie, you should really see it, you're going to do it. And I think it's the same thing with like this hair loss where it's like, I'm kind of nervous to try all these. But if you like meet a friend who it's like, actually, I've been doing minoxidil and it looks pretty good. And you're like, hey, buddy, nice thick rug of hair you got on top there. He lifts it up. It's a toupee made of donkey ashes. But yeah, no, I think it's true. I think, I'm looking at you. Your hair looks okay to me. I don't think anyone, unless they were picking through your hair like a chimpanzee, would find any fault with it.
No, I've lost, though, leading man hair. At the worst, I now have villain hair.
Yes,
you never see
character actor. Hair, yeah.
It's funny to me because I would say
community theater leading man.
Sure,
perhaps.
Yeah, maybe Guys and Dolls. Down at the well, you couldn't even say anywhere local in LA because that's all stuffed with real deal actors. But I do think something that is funny is that there is, me personally, I have less trust of a man with a full hairline.
Wow.
But I see it in movies. The hero is always the man with the full, thick head of hair.
Typically.
And the villain has a receding hairline at the least. The Joker, the worst villain of all, canonically has a receding hairline.
In the comic books. Yeah, you're right. You're saying sort of propaganda regarding hair and hair loss.
Like
from
James
films.
Bond, there's a reason he's wearing the toupee, and like Dr. No, I think is bald or at least thinning on top.
You could be thinking of Dr. Evil, but maybe we'll fact check that.
But yeah, no, I just think it is interesting though that we have this like extra level of trust, or it's what we look for in the people who conform to these traditional standards of what we think men and women should look like. There is this weird extra level of trust that we assign to people who are good looking or fit the standards.
I saw you type into your computer there. Did you get a fact check on Dr. No there at all?
Let me give it here just a second. Dr. No appears to have Dr. Julius No, excuse me. His hair.
He's like, Dr. No's my father.
Yeah, he's actually got his hair slicked back.
Okay, still villainous.
Yeah,
still villainous.
And it makes his hairline appear further back, whereas it looks to be genuine to me. So I would argue that Dr. Julius No, in reality, has a better hairline than James Bond, who's covering his with a toupee.
Very curious, very curious. Well, it was a not-so-brief history, but it was a wonderful history.
It was a wild ride.
Yeah. Well, we talked about John's hair. When we come back, we're talking about Jim's gut. All righty. Well, we did John's personal history of his, what was it, hairline, hair. We're doing Jimmy's personal history of his size and girth. I was born in 1996, January 9th it was. I weighed 9 pounds at birth. That's bigger than your average baby. You know, I was born in the winter, and you were born in the summer. I remember our mom telling us when you were born in preparation for your birth, she was swimming a lot and eating well and, you know, exercising. And when I was born in the winter, there was, you know, another plate at Thanksgiving. Christmas, you know, another cookie, you know, and then so that's why I came out.
I honestly feel like January 9th is very close to the fattest you are all year round.
Yeah,
Because you
true.
got
Yeah.
all the holidays.
Yeah.
You're still working through it.
It's my relation to the sun, I guess. I don't know, the Earth's rotation. But, you know, I've sort of been up and down my whole life. You know, when I was young, I was a little smaller, and then I got a little chubbier, then I had a growth spurt, and I'd go down a bit, and then I'd get bigger. As, you know, attentive listeners of the podcast know from the You Can Be Big, but You Can't Be Huge episode, I got huge in college. But for the most part, I've mostly been beefy, I think. Is there another fat adjacent word you would use? The beefy, husky? What would you?
Your mom was always buying you the Husky Boys pants.
The husky jeans, the big and tall section. I think really what my Achilles heel is you know, I just love rich food, and you know, I can't help myself. I am like a kid in a candy store when I'm around candy in a candy store, other rich foods for that matter. But you know, I could go through the whole encyclopedia of all my food escapades, my foodscapades. But I wrote down a couple of recent ones. We went to Chick-fil-A recently, you and I wanted some mac and cheese. They got good mac and cheese there at Chick-fil-A, and they had the small, medium, and large. And I went for the large, and you know, typically I guess you'd share it with 2-3 people, but
family.
I put it down like a sick dog.
I too also wanted mac and cheese and went with the small.
Yes, and you seem to be happy with your size selection, as was I. With
As were
mine.
you.
I recently, another fatscapade. I recently completed a Handel's ice cream card I had earned by waiting in line when the store first opened, where I was one of the first 100 customers, and I got a year's supply of Handel's ice cream, which meant I could go once a week and get a free small scoop of ice cream. Now, that's not too bad, Jim, a small scoop of ice cream once a week, except I'd let my girlfriend get the small and I got the medium, and it was just an excuse. I'd be like, here, I paid for yours already, so you can pay for mine, right? So there's a level of greed with the gluttony as well. And then recently here in Los Angeles, one of the perks is they'll do some fun promotional stuff, and for the TV show Poker Face, which if listeners have never seen Poker Face with Natasha Lyonne, really fun detective show, they were doing this thing at these local burger shops where you know, the character in the show has a good bullshit detector, right? So when she can always tell when someone's lying, and when someone's lying, she says bullshit. So basically, you'd go to one of these hamburger places. One place I went to was the Window here in Silver Lake. They make great smash burgers, and I said bullshit. And they gave me a free cheeseburger, and then I was eating my cheeseburger, and I heard some people saying things like heavy-handed, heavy-handed. I was like, what's heavy-handed? People keep saying heavy-handed. And then just about half a mile down the road, there was another hamburger place also doing this promotion. And so I sauntered over there, got in line, got another free burger, had it for dinner. So 2 cheeseburgers in a day. That's you know, that's a lover of rich food, isn't it?
Yeah, that's something I don't think most people have ever done.
Oh, God forbid if they did. But, you know,
Certainly not free.
No. Well,
Can't pass that up.
Yeah, I couldn't pass it up. But, you know, I try to exercise regularly. I'd say I eat healthy like 75-80% of the time. I'm pretty good Monday through Thursday, and then, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. One of those 3 I'll typically be okay. But, you know, the weekends I tend to cut loose a little bit. But, you know, I go on long walks. I hike. I, you know, do yoga. I got a little bit of muscle under the layer of blubber, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, during COVID, I kind of got down to my lowest in recent memory. I got under 200 pounds, which was pretty cool. I've been kind of around the 210, 215 for a while. And, oh, sorry, I didn't do my usual joke. 200 and heavy pounds. Got to keep the mystique. And, but yeah, I got under 200 and I was feeling good. And just since then, I've slowly put a bit more back on, but I'll do this bit sometimes that you particularly enjoy when I'll kick my shirt off. And folks who know me know I have a huge torso. Most people's legs to torso ratio, it's usually like 55-60% legs, and then
Yeah.
torso's kind of 40 to 45%.
Good math.
My torso's probably, what would you say, 55, 60.
60.
it's almost 20% longer than the legs. It's a huge torso, and I'll do this thing where I can kind of puff out my chest and suck in my gut, and I can really make my torso look huge, and I look kind of, you say I look like an old-timey strong man, like from the 20s.
Yeah, or Larry the Lobster from SpongeBob.
SpongeBob, yeah. So that's a bit I enjoyed doing. I can flex fat, as Garfield the cat once said. But I found some facts here in regards to our nation's weight problem and sort of, as we'll get into later, these GLP-1s. And a lot of these facts are courtesy of The Rise of GLP-1s by Megan Durrell. Weight gain in general is a distinctly American problem. It's an issue in many countries throughout the world, but it's distinctly American. Couple of facts here. Obesity rates have tripled over the last 60 years, gone from about 13% to about 40%. And 3 out of 4 Americans are now overweight/obese, which is just crazy, man. 75%. That's just crazy. And some of the reasons for this put forth in the article, there's less daily physical activity. So, we don't live on farms and ranches anymore. We're in air-conditioned offices, driving air-conditioned cars, not doing a lot of walking, avoiding the gym. And then in our diets, there's just higher amounts of fat, sugar, processed foods. And it's just, frankly, higher costs now of healthy foods, and the government and other food companies, they prioritize and subsidize kind of unhealthy foods that are just cheaper to make and are sort of motivated by profits. So again, some of the factors that have led to obesity rates rising. And, for years, doctors, scientists, researchers, pharmaceutical companies, they have been desperate for an answer. There have been fad diets. There have been workouts. This is like the equivalent of toupees and donkey ashes, right? And, the proven method, you've heard people say it, diet and exercise, right? When I lost a ton of weight, when I was at my biggest, I cut portions in half, I ate a lot healthier, and I worked out every single day. And I would occasionally cheat just to prevent myself from going crazy, but over time, that yielded great results.
Yeah, I think the toughest part about that, though, is the consistency of dieting and exercising can be undone by a weekend binge.
Yes, exactly.
That's, I think, what people find so difficult.
Especially as you get older, too, and your metabolism's just not as good. It's like if you cut loose, you really got to fight back. But this brings us to the fat shot drugs. These drugs are semaglutides, which you see advertised everywhere on TV. The names Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. There's countless others. Just really quick, of all those names, do you have one that you think is the funniest?
It's definitely between Wegovy and Mounjaro.
I think Mounjaro. I think when I first heard Mounjaro, I kind of had a Mandela effect and was calling it Mounjaro, like Buongiorno. So I think that's why I think it's Mounjaro. But anyway, I'm gonna give the crown to Mounjaro. But most of these drugs, they're injectable, but some are administered orally. But anyway, what are semaglutides? They are a type of GLP-1. I know what you're wondering. What is a GLP-1? Well, GLP-1 is an abbreviation of glucagon-like peptide 1, and they are a type of peptide hormone that can stimulate the pancreas to produce more insulin after meals, hence why it's used for people with type 2 diabetes. Quoting from the article, they slow the movement of food from the stomach to the small intestine, which helps suppress appetite, meaning the patient feels full faster and longer. As a result, they eat less. So you've sometimes heard of these fat shot drugs being called appetite suppressants. That's what this is. Just the food is moving a little slower through the machine. Okay, pretty interesting.
I feel like that would wreak havoc on the. I guess you'll get to this in the side
I'm sure
effects.
I will. These GLP-1s were discovered in 1984, approved, like I said, for type 2 diabetes treatment in 2005, and then they were approved for weight loss treatment 9 years later in 2014. And they've really exploded over the last few years as more and more and more have been approved. Between 2018 and 2023, these GLP-1s had a 300% increase in prescriptions. And again, that statistic only goes till 2023. So I have to imagine at this point it's even more astronomical. It's interesting because it's seen by many as a miracle cure, but there are downsides, the biggest of which is it's pretty prohibitively expensive. Without insurance, these treatments can be $1,000 a month, which is just a lot. It can be a lot less if you have type 2 diabetes, you're prescribed it. It can't be too much out of pocket. But for a lot of people, like celebrities, like they're not getting prescribed this, right? They are cashing out, at least $1,000 a month, right?
Jim McGaffigan famously did a whole special about it where he's lost a ton of weight.
Yeah, and as someone who's made his bread and butter in the comedy business talking about their relationship with food, it is something that I've often thought about is as this appetite suppressant, it would really change your relationship to food. And I don't always have the healthiest relationship to food, but I do really love food, and it really does make me happy, and I love cooking, and I like trying different types of food, and I really adore and value my relationship with food. So one of the things I wonder about is just like, do I really want to fundamentally change my relationship with something I love, even if I don't always love it in the most productive way? That is something that I often think about. Do you think if you were in a similar situation, you would have those reservations?
Well, yeah, I think food is pretty central to both of our identities, quite frankly. It's like I really would be stunned if there was a platter of mac and cheese and you, as a result of being on one of these drugs, was like, mac and cheese, I don't think so.
I'm not
good.
hungry. Yeah.
I'd be like, Jim, what?
What happened to you, buddy? No, it's true. Not to say that would be the worst thing in the world once in a while, but yeah, consistently, I think it would kind of numb you a bit. It's like with some of the hair loss treatments. Are you this way for life? Are you on these drugs for life? Is it temporary? Do you just get down to your desired weight and then your habits improve? That seems unlikely. It seems like you would yo-yo once you go off these things. Another issue is gastrointestinal issues. You can, with these drugs, experience vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, hopefully not all at the same time.
All the classics.
All the classics you see on the commercials. And, I think, too, it's with celebrities using it, it's like the hair loss treatments where it works if no one notices. But if people notice you got Botox, if people notice you lost 50 pounds in 6 months, if people notice you got a new hairline overnight, they're these things that like the general public can be kind of cruel about, right?
But I do think if you weather the storm, if you can just stick to and hold fast.
They'll
forget. This is me now. This is me now. This is me now.
I always was this.
Eventually, the old image that people had of you fades away, and this is what takes its place.
This, to me, though, becomes the most fascinating question are these fat shock drugs, and again, I'm not referring to Ozempic in its use to treat type 2 diabetes. I'm not talking about it in this context. I'm purely talking about these drugs in terms of people using them to lose weight, okay? So type 2 diabetes, very serious and good that these things are used to help people with that condition. But I'm talking about people who are just trying to cut weight. I wonder if it is moral and or ethical to use these things because I think, and maybe this is like a Catholic guilt look at this, it's like, if you have gained a lot of weight through eating a lot and not exercising and being gluttonous and having sloth, right? These 7 deadly sins, right? It to me feels a little immoral, a little unethical to then just take this miracle drug to immediately undo all that sinning. It to me just seems like you should have to balance the scales with diet, with exercise. You should have to learn some sort of lesson. You should have to find some sort of long-term solution outside of just sticking a needle in your tummy. Am I crazy for suggesting that?
I think the difference is that we're seeing obesity more as a physical condition, almost akin to like alcoholism, where people say alcoholism is a disease, or like my inability to stop myself from eating is a disease. I need to take a drug to stop me from doing this. Or in the case of alcoholism, I need to refrain from it entirely. I need to attend meetings that help me maintain my focus on staying sober. So I think that perception of it has changed a little bit, as opposed to being a lack of self-control. It's more like a medical condition.
And I think that varies from person to person, because I don't see it in myself as an addiction I can't stop. I see it in conscious choice every time I choose to order a large mac and cheese. Like I see these as conscious decisions I'm making. So I think it is different person to person, and not everyone who's overweight is the result of excessive eating and lack of exercise, right? You can have other medical conditions that cause weight gain. But I think too, like, the other side, it's just like, maybe we're lucky to be living in this time, and maybe when great medical advancements come along, you take them, and just if you have the resources and you have the willingness, you take them. And I think too, like, we compare our two imperfections, right? The hair loss and a little extra around the tummy, and one is rather cosmetic with hair loss. That's not really a danger to your health, whereas excessive weight, it can be a danger to your health. And then so is there a spectrum of ethics? Is there a spectrum of morality where it's more ethical, more moral for me to do it because it's actually going to improve my physical health, versus it's less ethical, less moral for you to do it because it's purely cosmetic? Is it wrapped up in vanity? Is it not I mean, I guess you can get a sunburn if you're bald, but that was another thing I was considering as well. Is there this dividing line between something that's cosmetic health and physical health, and does that impact the ethics, the morality?
I think, yeah, the GLP-1s for that reason are seen as more, people, it's like you're sort of, you're cheating a little bit. I think that's like the feel when you hear about celebrities who go on Ozempic. They're like, well, they lost all that weight, but they're on Ozempic, or they're on Wegovy or whatever. Or Charles Barkley talks about it, and it's like, well, you lost all that weight, but you're using like it's almost like taking steroids in a way, similar feeling. Right. Whereas the hair loss and the hair treatment stuff it does feel just more vain. To be like, no, actually, this is who I am. And I think it's interesting, too, because there's been a lot more openness from women coming forward who have hair loss and talk about, wearing wigs or even doing these treatments that I think men are much more sheepish to admit that they do. And I think that has found a bit more acceptance. People aren't really, just because if you're going bald as a woman, it feels more intense than men. But I think at the same time, it is one of those things where, I think we should perhaps have a bit more, and I don't think this is probably going to happen, but I think there should be a bit more sensitivity towards men who are losing their hair. I think it's one of the easiest punchlines, and I would say that men get away with a lot of awful things that they say about women's appearance that they can't control. And I think there's a pretty natural desire from women to get back. And I think one of the main targets is either height or hair loss, which is tough because those are two things you don't really have control over. But yeah, I think in general with the body positivity movement, there has been a bit more of an acceptance of some things, and baldness in a way I think has had some of that. Like, definitely I think it's probably people are more accepting of it than ever, despite the hair loss is a choice slogan by hymns. But yeah, it's just a pretty interesting thing, like, because we've said it before, like, it's such a weird phenomenon to be inside of a body. And to me, I don't feel like I am my body. I'm inside of my body. But, the way that you present yourself to the world is you are your body. And people are clearly willing to go to pretty drastic lengths to improve the appearance of theirs. And it kind of just boils down to, what are you willing to do?
Before we go to break, there's a quick family anecdote I want you to share involving baldness and involving fatness. It was one of our dad's friends, right? Involves one of our dad's friends. Go ahead, tell the story.
He was a larger, huskier man, and he was also bald towards the end of his life. But he's told a story of when he was younger. He was at a birthday party, I believe, for a cousin who was getting older, probably around 35, 40, starting to lose his hair, and also had a bit of a gut. And one of the uncles came forward and he gave him a pair of running shoes. And the guy was like, "Running shoes? I don't run. Why are you giving me running shoes?" And he said, "Son, you can be bald or you can be fat, but you can't be both," which is ironic because we were told this anecdote by a man who was both bald and fat.
Yeah. And you mentioned height earlier. Thank God we're both 6 feet tall. But yes. Hey, it comes back to our original point. Nobody's nerfed.
Nobody's nerfed. Everybody's got advantages. Everybody's got disadvantages. And I think the more that you just are able to find a way to embrace being comfortable in your own skin, regardless of what you look like, that's the most important thing. It's obviously easier for some people other than others, when you conform or fit some of the practical beauty standards. But the most I think attractive thing that a person can be, regardless of how they look, is confident. And if you can find a way to overcome the meat sack that you are blessed or cursed to be born into, and be confident regardless, then you're on your way.
All right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to fire up the laboratory and bring to life a FrankenBrother. All right, time to build FrankenBrother. We, in our Aging Comedy Stars podcast, we had FrankenComic. Today we are constructing FrankenBrother. So we're going to take various body parts from both John and myself to create the most handsome brother possible. I also jotted down, this is not Frankenstein's monster. This is Flynn Bros Stein's monster. You like that?
I don't. It sort of reminds me of The Substance. I feel like in The Substance there would be the FrankenBrother who would have all of our best. Then you'd have to respect the balance and come back, and then all of our worst features.
Right.
That
we're
version of
Demi
us would
Moore,
come in.
and the FrankenBrother is
Margaret.
Margaret Qualley. There's the name. Cool. So we're going to go from head to toe, debate who has the better body parts. And important to note, this is purely physical. So we are vain. This personality, intelligence, not important. We are trying to attract an incredibly shallow person, woman and or man.
Yeah,
right? We are going for pure aesthetics.
Someone who
okay?
doesn't speak our language.
Yes, perfect. If we were just presenting a physical specimen. All right, let's start with an easy one. Hair.
You.
It's thick as a rug, some
Congrats,
say.
buddy.
All right, here's where it might get a little more contentious. Will, you mind tallying these up, and we'll see. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for tallying them up. We'll see who wins in the end. Not wins, but who has the most
Wow.
physically attractive body parts.
I feel like this has the potential to tear us apart. We better have a tie.
Only
we'll
if
see.
I lose. All right, eyes. Now, you're probably going to say you. I'm going to say me. I have a beautiful set of, depending on who's looking, blue or green eyes, depending on the lighting. Even on my driver's license, they're not sure. I've been complimented many times for my eyes. Your argument.
My eyes are larger. They're a rich green, and I, too, have been complimented many times on my eyes. Although probably my funniest story about my eyes was I was dating a woman in college who I'd been dating her for months, at least 4 to 5 months, and she said, I just love your blue eyes. And I was like, my eyes are green. You look at my eyes all the time. So,
this is well, we both kind of have this issue where it's being European mutts. It's tough to tell if they're blue or green.
Well, mine are green. Mine are pretty definitively
How about
green.
this, buddy? We'll do, what's that condition when you got one eye's one color and one eye's the other? Do we split it? Are we going to do one eye from each brother? How about that?
Sure. We probably should have some ties, I guess.
That's true. All right, we'll do one eye from
Unless we're
each
going to
brother.
have Slade decide who has the better eyes, but I can't.
Staring contest.
Who
That's going
blinks
to take
first?
too long.
Too
the
long.
episode's going too long.
Also-
We'll do one eye from each. We'll do one eye from each.
Also, terrible podcast content. A staring
contest. Much more interesting in person. All right, nose. What do you think for nose? Mine is more bulbous.
Yours is a bit more bulbous. I fell on my face as a child, so my nose is slightly to the right.
It is a little. I'm actually. I hadn't even
noticing
really
it right
thought
now.
of that.
Yeah. My glasses. I've never had a pair of glasses.
Let me see
that
your
honestly
profile.
fits
Turn to
right.
the side there. Oh, it's pretty straight. Mine's okay, but it's a little bulbous down at the bottom
little
there.
elfish.
Little
maybe,
elfish.
like a jolly elf.
Do you think you deserve the nose?
If you're so timid to put
I'll give you
your
the
foot forward,
nose.
I'll
Let's
take
give
a
John the
nose.
nose. Let's give John the nose there, Will. Okay, mouth/smile. Now, this is a tricky one. When I talk a bit, I kind of go out the side of my mouth. You have a bigger
As do
mouth.
I. Yeah.
We both have rather big lips.
I'd say mine are a touch fuller.
Touch folder, that's true. My teeth are probably a little straighter if we're going to look at the smile.
Oh, mine are larger.
That's true. They are larger. They are
as
larger.
we talked about in the teeth episode.
Top row, bottom row. What are we going to do? Top lip, bottom
Give me
lip?
the top row, you the bottom.
No. We'll splitting it.
so.
All right, that's another tie.
I feel like I have a very charming gap between my teeth. I don't find that to be a defect at
Well,
all.
some who prefer conventional handsomeness might disagree. Okay, good. Jot down the charming gap of the notes there, Will. All right, face shape. I'm going to cede this one to you. Mine is too moon face, too round. Yours is a little more angular.
Yes.
So I think you get face shape.
Well, I accept your concedement.
Facial hair.
Again, this goes back to me falling on my face as a child. I have scar tissue that has ruined the chance of me ever having a full beard. You have very nice beard hair.
Full beard, so you'll give it to
you.
me. Although,
Give it to
to be fair, my beard color is different from the hair on my head. Is that prohibitive, or are we okay?
It's better than mine, which I would say my hair is also slightly different than the color on my head, though closer, I would say, to the color on the top of my head. But yeah,
I'll take
I've got some
facial hair.
patches.
All right. Well, if you're gonna beg me, I'll take facial hair.
All right.
Let's move to neck. Mine's thicker, certainly. It's hard to find shirt collars that fit. I have a double chin, so this might be.
I think
heading
I
toward you.
take neck.
Let's
I think I
give
take
John neck there. All right, here's one where we're gonna have to really debate torso/chest. Now, this is this me in default? Is this me in strongman mode? What are we talking here? Because if it's me in strongman mode, I'm gonna slam you to the mat. I think. What do you think?
We may have to take a photo of you in strongman mode
Tease
so people
the
can see what they're
episode,
talking about. I'd say I'm in a bit more of a classically in shape
You don't
torso.
have teats, you're saying?
I don't really have teats.
I'll give you chest. Let's give him torso.
I would say
slash
torso,
chest.
maybe core.
My torso is we'll just call it torso.
Sure.
maybe,
You may have slightly broader shoulders than me. We both have broad
Probably,
shoulders.
Yeah, probably.
We
That's
can-
true.
we
It's a
can,
Flynn
give
trait,
that,
isn't
yeah.
it? All right, body hair. You, I would say, have. Let's break it down. You have more armpit hair. I have more chest hair.
That is true. We don't need to discuss
leg-
another part of the body.
No, we don't got to do the midsection. Leg hair, arm hair is about even. Leg hair, you probably got me beat. I suppose what is the more attractive? I have a very on my torso. I got a nice perfect circle in the middle of chest hair, and then the little trail that goes down to the belly button. I think that's quite a desirable.
This might be
shape
more
of-
information than anyone ever wanted from us. I'm gonna do this. I'll give you chest hair, me leg hair.
Great, and then yeah, good. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, cool. Arms. Okay, I guess this is musculature of the arms. Let's see here. You got some nice forearms. You probably got a little more definition.
I would say I have
in
more
your arms.
definition, but you're a bit girthier.
Yeah, a bit girthier. So it's like, do you like the beefcake sort of Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, or do you like the svelte? Who are you? I'm trying to think of a movie character. I don't
Scarecrow.
know. Scarecrow, another Batman villain.
I probably should have gotten out of the Batman universe.
Yeah. Arms. I think I'll give you arms.
Wow. Okay. I was thinking it would be funny to see your arms on my chest. So
Yeah.
I think just for
You wanna
that
give me
sake,
arms.
let's give
All right,
you
give me
arms.
arms. All right, sounds good. Okay, hands. We both have kind of big palms, but not the longest fingers.
True.
That's a Flynn trait.
Let's see whose
isn't it?
hand is bigger.
Let's see. We're gonna size them up here. Pretty dead even.
Basically identical. Yeah,
Will
that's a
says
tough
exactly
one.
the
That's a
same. We'll have
tough
to
one.
trust them. Here's the thing, though. I have fingertip dermatitis, and
Yeah.
I constantly have to lotion my hands.
Sure.
And I think maybe we'll give you the hands.
I can
for
also
this
play
one.
the guitar with
That's
my
true.
hands,
Yeah,
which,
that's true.
maybe
That's
that
true.
should
You're
be,
quite musically gifted. Well,
calluses on my fingers.
this next one, I think,
Boy.
well, similar to the hair one, will be easy. Gut, I think we're gonna.
Are we
have to-
talking about the inside of how our digestion works?
how
or,
food moves from the stomach to
yeah,
intestines? I'll give you
no,
gut,
I
buddy.
think
I
we could
think-
have called that core, perhaps.
Core,
but,
yeah. I've been using gut a lot. We're gonna go ahead and skip the genitalia. I don't think anyone needs to hear.
I
about
think we've
that.
already given them quite a bit.
But if we were keeping score, me. No, you're supposed to say me at the same time as like
sure,
a bit. I was trying to
sure,
signal.
sure.
you.
I was
You want to try
astonished.
again?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
we were keeping score,
Me.
There you
Oh,
go. Classic
hilarious.
little mix up. Cool. Will gave me the point. All right, don't
Oh,
tell
yeah,
him.
yeah.
Will, don't tell him. All right, I wrote down here tush. Better tush. Mine is very flat.
You do for
a man who sits on it
Yeah.
so often. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why it's flat. I sit on it.
Are you giving me tush?
I guess so. Mine's bigger, perhaps being a bigger man who eats more
I
excessively.
think let's give it to me. You can have thighs.
Oh, good. All
You've
those
got-
years of
yeah.
soccer, I think I
Yeah.
deserve thighs.
Yeah.
Here's where it's curious. Legs. Now, I have beautiful, muscular calves. Again, a result of years of playing soccer. You, growing up, you had chicken bone legs, weak, worthless in many respects. But since you have moved to Los Angeles, and all the walking you do and the hiking, they're really strong and they're very nice.
Let's say I have
you got
quite
nice,
defined calves.
Yes, your calves have come in a little. However, I mean, I'll see photos of me in shorts and I'll get hot under the collar. I'll tell you.
I don't know if that's ever happened to me, so I'll give you legs too.
You'll give me legs. Thanks, buddy. Thank you. All right, feet/toes.
This one's
is
for the real
This
sickos.
is for the freaks. Feet/toes. Again, I have to cop to my medical issue, having gout. I think just having a
Yeah.
gout-ridden
Fair
big
enough.
toe, I couldn't imagine giving myself feet. Although you do have ingrown, or had at one point an ingrown toe. That's all
long
cleared
gone,
up. Yeah,
long
yeah,
gone
yeah.
now. Figured out solutions. We do both have huge big toes,
Yes, that's true.
larger
That's
than
true.
typical. But
That
I'll
is
take
true.
I'll take
Take feet and
feet/toes.
toes. Take feet and toes.
And if you want a picture of our feet and toes, you go
send
a email.
$4,000 to FlynnBrosPod@gmail.com. Height, we're basically the exact same, I think.
I think you've got me by maybe a half inch,
Half
or an
inch, maybe, you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, I think you're a little taller than
You gonna
me, pal.
give me that
I'll
one?
give you height.
All right. Final category: body odor/breath. Now, this is one we almost can't answer. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to stick our armpits in Will's face and then breathe in his nose. No, we're not going to
I'll say this. I've never smelled you stink body odor-wise.
That's
In
true.
all of our years of
That's
living
true.
together, perhaps it has something to do with your lack of armpit hair. Sorry again to the listening audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll let you. I would say default smell better, but I have
There you
obviously
go.
ways of addressing my various
Okay, well, we're
odors.
going to have to add these up here. Is Will currently doing the math? All right, so Jim won this one, body odor, breath. Will is currently tallying them up.
There's a few halves kind of in here.
Should we do a little music here?
Yeah.
What do you think? Da, da, da,
What's
da.
your? What would
Oh.
you say you're most happy with on your body? But
Most
let's do some
happy?
body
That's a good
positivity.
question. Boy, I do. I think I have nice eyes. Certainly, there's a twinkle to them. I was ashamed we had to tie that category. A thick, robust head of hair. Certainly. I don't know. I'm not the. I'm no. Young Robert Redford, but I'm very happy with my body. And to your point earlier, it's your confidence
Sure.
is very important in your
Absolutely.
body. So, hair or eyes, I suppose. How about you, sir?
I'd say I was very self-conscious about how huge my lips were as a boy, and I had quite buck teeth that
Yes.
jetted out at every which angle. So I'm happy with the way that my mouth has come together.
yes.
And yeah,
And I think, no matter how this score shakes out, we'll always be bros.
that's true. That's true. That's a.
But having said that, we do need to get a final tally here. Will seems to be double checking now, sort of like Santa Claus. He made a list, now he's checking,
it twice. Although instead of toys for good boys and girls, it's our body parts.
Points for vanity.
I wouldn't want to meet that Santa.
All right, final score, Will. Let's hear it. It's a close one. All right, here we go. It's a John. Will says John is up by 1, but if we count my genitalia, it's a tie. Well, buddy, they say a tie is like kissing your sister, and we don't have a sister, so I'm going to give you the win. Congratulations.
wow.
You have more
I have
handsome
more-
body parts.
wow.
Yeah, if only to spare the audience from hearing us have
Any
to
more
refer
discussion of
the
that
G word.
unfortunate yeah, well, there you go.
We've
So,
created a very handsome
good brother.
FrankenBrother.
yeah. So should we just run
Congratulations.
through it really quick? Hair, Jim. Eyes, tie. My nose. My top my top lip, your bottom lip and teeth. Face shape, me. Facial hair, Jim's facial hair. My neck and torso and chest. We're getting Jim's chest hair and my leg hair. Jim's arms, my hands, my gut. We're not talking about that part. My tush, Jim's thighs and legs. My feet and toes, Jim's height and smell.
Fabulous. Well, I'm going to have to look over the scores, and worst comes to worst, I'll demand a recount. Please subscribe, comment, and leave a rating. Send questions, comments, or big idea suggestions to our business email, flynnbrospod@gmail.com. Thank you to our producer, Will Slade. And we'll see you next time on the Flynn Brothers Podcast. Take care, buddy.
Hey, buddy. You take care.